Oh, hello, everyone. My name is A.W. Schultz. I'm with A.W. Schultz Training and Engineering. And primarily what I do is working with individuals on asset management. And a little bit about what I'm going to be doing today is kind of a shift what we're doing as an organization. So I hope you have time to go through this with me because I'm pretty excited about this new topic. And if we have time to the end, I'm open to questions that you might have. So last week, I spoke at a project management symposium. Now, the audience here are primarily in IT tech project managers, C-suites, and other individuals. And in that presentation, I started off with a simple question. Actually, I had 4 questions. The first question was, how many of you have your jobs been altered or changed due to COVID-19? And to my surprise, while I kind of knew it was a layup, almost everyone in the audience of close to 100 people raised their hand. So then I asked another question. How many of you have new positions because of COVID-19, either loss of or transfer to a new role? And a little bit less, but still a lot of individuals raised their hand. Then I ask another question. How many of you are concerned about the future of your children or grandchildren due to climate change? And again, almost everyone raised their hand. And my last question was, how many of you have seen your organizations, your businesses make noticeable efforts to be more eco-friendly into for the future environment? And while there was less, there was still about 30 to 50% of the audience raised their hand. So what does this have to do with adaptive work management? Well, I'll get into that. At the end, I'll bow it all together. But what I want to start with is a story. And it's a story about manufacturing, about reliability, and how the evolution of it has come forward. So I'm going to begin by sharing my screen. And what I'm going to be talking about is how to improve the use and process of adaptive work management. First, we want to take a look at why do you want to change it? There's many different processes out there, many different techniques or strategies on that. So what makes this different than anything else? And the simple answer is maybe not. But the important answer is, how do you drive process transformation? And I'm going to share with you some examples and also a story to lead into it. So to begin with, British and France were at war. This was the 1790s, 1780s. There was a dire need for labor. We couldn't make enough of stuff. We couldn't make enough agriculture, food to replenish everybody's need on the growth of it. Slavery was predominant. Now we move forward to about the 1830s. One thing we did see, and we can't necessarily anticipate, is that there was a large influx of trades or craftspersons out there. They led to the development of agricultural machines for faster processing, sifters, grain sifters to help create breads and grains faster and flours much faster. The development of the textile mill, the ability to make fabrics fast, a large abundance of it. And more particularly, the way to harness and engraft power through the use of water and coal. Now, almost 100 years would pass before we saw something like this again. During that time, we saw a telegraphic network, ways that where you could, at the time, you could only communicate within your community or a delayed response through postal services. Telegraph allowed communications through hundreds of miles. The advancements and the continual use of extensive railroads connecting towns together. And the ability for assembly, and more particularly, the harnessing and grasping of electricity and using its capabilities. Now we move forward to about the 1930s, often called the digital revolution. This is where we had the development of what we call the supercomputers. 1970s and 1980s, we were able to take that supercomputers and make it more affordable and smaller and more uses for it, more applications for it in the industry. Taking what we had to incorporate in PLCs, circuit boards, the creating robotics, continuous flow assembly. And then we walk into what many say we're still in it right now, is Industrial 4.0. No exact dates of when the start of it has occurred, but it's around the 2000s. And with that, we saw the ability to take a large amount of information, big data, and transform it to the cloud, where we could further dissect, run algorithms, and determine more efficient ways of producing the value chain within organizations. This digital transformation allowed us to take things wirelessly, artificial intelligence, and its continual grasp and energy around the topic. The ability of taking microchips from AI, you incorporate sensors, scanners, and ways of monitoring and grasping more information and more efficient ways of producing. This led to Industrial 4.0 and a huge jump in the way we were able to produce some of the products we do today. It is the interconnecting of people and machine. However, we have seen a shift. The European Union in 2020 determined that we were experiencing what was going to be called later Industrial 5.0. It was based on three premises. Sustainability. Now, this aims to optimize resources by minimizing waste and reducing energy consumption. Resiliency. Taking a card from Industrial 4.0, this is about taking those algorithms and having to be able to react to it in a real time that gives you flexibility, adaptability, and having redundancies for long-term success in economic environment that's faced with social disruptions. And the third one, and this is what I'm going to be talking about today, is the human-centric. The project management of managing change, transformation, the value of the people, design, and the productivity. It's something I call adaptive work management. Now, we're not waiting for this to happen. It's happening already. Industries are ahead, are already advancing and taking the early steps on trying to grasp the wave of what is Industrial 5.0. So what is driving this? Well, there's three things. And I asked you earlier on about, or I shared with you the questions I had asked at the symposium. Energy transition, the movement away from fossil fuels, developing more efficient transportation systems that uses electricities and hybrid vehicles, implementing carbon capture and storage technologies, reducing that greenhouse gas emissions. The second is climate concerns. We've seen the warming trends, more frequent or intense natural disasters, the loss of biodiversity. Animals are no longer there out in the wild anymore, and food and water insecurities. And the third one, which you could ask was probably the driving force around this that led this down this rabbit hole of change, is COVID-19. Reduced production and manufacturing, the instabilities in supply chain and the disruptions we saw in it, change in consumers' buying behaviors. Think about the essential goods and labor shortages and workforce disruptions. People being sent home and not wanting to go back to work. These three things have driven what was seen as Industrial 5.0. Now, I share this slide because it kind of grasps on what we see as change and some of the drivers behind that. The cartoonist was not aware of Industry 5.0, but did see some of the trendings out there and try to make a comic relief of it. So going back to what is Industry 5.0 and what are some of the drivers behind it? Now, it's not all doom and gloom. You can ask, there are supporting aspects to what is sustainability. Now, the environmental social governance. This is what a lot of organizations, mainly being led in Asia and in Europe, are trying to tie financial decision-making based on environmental metrics. So what was once a performance tracking metrics, now it's on metrics on how the companies are impacting the environment. And they're rewarded well for having those. You talk about the carbon neutrals or carbon credits. These built-in programs that integrate into corporate strategies, and they focus on the short, medium, and long-term performances. The next one is resiliency. Now, this is arguably what is ISO 55000, addressing the strategic and tactical management of assets, taking what we know about Industrial 4.0 with all that data and incorporating them into how we best manage our assets. And to me, that is what we are on this call, is what's driving our businesses in the near future. But the third one, and the one that I've been working on for almost a year, is what I call adaptive work management. This is the enabling framework for managing the people side of change, preparing, support, and equip individuals to drive change. The idea is to be flexible and consider the holistic portion in manners that the majority can support. Some of the key trends that are driving this is agile methodologies, Kanbans, scrums, much more common terms in the technology industry. Advancement automations, robotics, it allows and freeing up employees to be more strategic workers. Having remote work, and the human-centric, delivering on the org by continuously improving products and services. Now, to think about adaptive work management, and I tell this story on it, so think about your captain of a ship, and another ship is bearing down on you. Think of yourself as a manager, and change is coming, and that change is going to blow you out of the water. You can do one of two things. Let's pretend that the captain has got one cannonball left, just to date this conversation. He fires on that ship. He misses. He looks back, he realizes he's got no more cannonballs. But what if that captain takes that gunpowder and puts it into bullets? Takes the first bullet, fires, he's off 30 degrees. Second bullet, he's off 10 degrees. With that third bullet, it's the starboard side. He's now created a line of sight that he can move forward and determine that he's got the maximum efficiency of making that target. Now, like a captain, you can't sit there and fire bullets all day. Small sprint projects aren't necessarily going to drive the results on it. At some point, you got to take that cannonball, put it all in, and fire. And that is a theory of adaptive work management, is that it is a project management tool that you can utilize. We're not taking or creating something new. We're just knowing when we need to take it out of the toolbox and when you need to fire it out loud. So in adaptive work management, it's also asking about change. And when you think about change, you have to think about, why is it so hard? If you're missing any of these blocks, it's going to cause disruptions. And disruptions are going to cascade into further problems down the road. Ensuring that you've got a vision, skills, incentives, resources, and an action plan gives you the most success for a change in a transformational world. Think about transformation is that only about 12% of companies from 1955 are still in existence. The lifespan of companies are diminishing, meaning success guarantees nothing. The pandemic is a perfect example of it, being agile and quick. Only the most responsive changes will survive. I share this photo because it's out of Harvard Business Review about where change is hard. And it's hard when the hardest ones to change are the frontline workers. But then there's this powerful quote here. 70% of transformations fail. And just transformation is going in and changing what was a current state and trying to drive it out. And in a maintenance reliability world, a lot of it is how are you managing your work management? And often it's because the resistance to change or management doesn't accept it. But often it's only 30% of people feel engaged, and only about 5% employees feel that they contribute to improving the business processes. Now, this contradicts all theories of adaptive work management and emphasizes the need for a human-centric approach. Just supporting this, transformation rates by industry. This is out of Brightline. And what I've highlighted here is primarily where our businesses we talk about: the manufacturing, the automotive, transportation, tech, and then the consumer goods. And what that says is, of areas that are most favorable to changes, these are often some of the ones that have shown. But why engage as a team? Well, the profitability and employee engagement, it drives the results. And on the previous slide where I said only 12% of the companies are still existent today, I'm willing to bet that they were able to mark on all these. Engaging employees results in increased revenue and employees' engagement. Now, adaptive work management is, you put it in 4 quadrants. Resiliency is an adaptation to the environment. So this is knowing your culture that you're living. The inclusive design and assembly support the diversity needs. Interaction and connectivity, leveraging that information. And then important part is the flexibility, catering to the dynamics. You're coming in, you're doing a transformation, you're driving out results on it. You need to be flexible on it. It's not going to take a day. I share with you this problem because I did a case study. HMG, it's an official name, but a real situation, is a global leader in its industry. However, they were faced with profitability shortages, high yield, and they needed to make some changes in how the business was being ran. Working with their senior team, we came up with a 7-part lesson of how we're going to drive out change. First was defining the problem. Second is determine the root cause, define the solution space, working with individuals and jointly designing a planning management system. We're going to pilot it, roll it out, assess the results. At step 1, there's some dangers, and I call them the solutionites. These are the prescribed solutions that could also be wrong. So it's important to spend a little time here and identify what is the true root cause on it. Sometimes managers and others may already have their prescribed solution where they haven't really defined the problem. And the other danger is, and this is from Edward Deming's quality guru pioneer, most quality problems are system problems, meaning we don't want to blame people. We want to talk about what failed in the process that's driving some of these negative changes. Step 2 is determining the causes. You measure and analyze. It's just similar to a Lean Six Sigma project. After we concluded our assessment, we found that there were 6 major areas and 20 minor problems within BMG. One is they had ad hoc job planning. Planners would often have to wait until a line would go down and then all of a sudden be jumped in to do planning work, waiting for that planning work to occur. But too often than not, the technicians that do the work were often pulled in to get the line back up and running. And infrequent or subject monitoring problems and roadblock removers. Quality would blame operations for failures. Operations would blame safety for over regulations. And it was constantly a circular effect. And management didn't prioritize the work and said no to many jobs. Maintenance wasn't allowed to have outages or turnarounds to drive out some of these, gremlins that were festering around in their factories. And difficulty managing earned interruptions from ongoing factory operations. This company was faced with a lot of innovations and constant changing. And often they had unclear roles and responsibilities. Accountability regarding projects. No one wanted to take responsibility, and it was always somebody else's problem. They were a culture of firefighting. Step 3 is define the solution space. After doing the assessment, we determined that they had a low maturity level. There was no common language or protocols regarding jobs or tasks. They Individual jobs were on their own to figure out how to define, plan, and do the work. There'd be cases where one line wouldn't even have a planner. It was regarded as a supervisor's responsibility to do the planning for that. And the organizational level, only the processes and forms related to work schedule were focused on and required corporate approval, reporting, and financial management of it. So often in the case they had their hands tied. One thing to note is when you're dealing with a company with a low maturity level, often there are no standards. However, there are some common practices or processes that overlap when you start to get more maturity. And if you go into 4, benchmarking is overlapping step 3. They've got system integration and design based on data and metrics. They're making decisions when they do it. And in step 5, this is a continuous operation. They've got metrics, they've got visions, and they're continually cycling themselves and trying to improve forward. BMG, they struggled in 1. They were in the early stages. No standards, ad hoc decision-making, informal metrics. So we implemented a roadmap. First, we discussed the assessment findings with the team to find out a sanity check to get their buy-in. We kicked off a core team and we created a long-term commitment focused on communication. We began building priority matrices so they were able to plan their work, clarify the roles of the team members, determine the hierarchies. Often we'd have meetings and we wanted to get away from having managers in there to make all the decisions and deliver that training and process change. Implement a simple planning process and tools of, from notifications down to closeout, and adjust the process to change and roll out to broader areas. To do each of these, it was a bit of a sprint approach because we did sections at a time. And really similar to Deming's, it was a PDCA. So quick charters, nothing too advanced, but make it fast, elegant, and sweet. Identify the risks, review the results, lessons learned, adapt to business culture, and move on. And continue to cycle the process. What we learned from the element of success is that 4 key areas: the people, the process, the products, being the toolkits or templates or examples that we used, and the technologies to help it for sustaining and continually go forward. A system's perspective and participation design techniques are essential for building a long-term adaptation. So we talk about transformation. The idea is how it's going to maintain going forward into the future. Now, from the results, this is a 15-month period. From the date of initial assessment to when we came back in to assess it again, we saw a 20% increase in the productivity. Delays were reduced by 45%. We saw a reduction in maintenance spend, mainly from the expedition of parts and managing labor. And OE, overall equipment efficiencies, overall saw a 12% increase. Now, from a baseline that was pretty poor, that's pretty impressive. So where do you start? Low-hanging fruit. Do these immediately. You're looking at the high impact and cost. If it's got low impact, high cost, don't do these at all. They're a waste of time. But offer a continuous improvement to drive these out that have low cost, but have due impact on it. These are the sprints. These are the things that after you've picked up all that fruit on the ground, you're moving on to the next layer of apples. in a metaphor, we continue to pull the easy ones. And then you get support help. This costs more, but does have a high impact. I share this cartoon because it answers a simple question. Too often in organizations, they say, manager says, we need to change. We need to make things right. And everybody agrees to it. Then if you look at who's willing to change, well, the hands aren't that high. And then by the time you're asking, well, who's willing to lead change? It's ghost, crickets out there. So BMG was a fast-moving, cost-sensitive global line of business. It knew it could only stay competitive if it's frequently upgraded its technology and offering a continuous approach to driving out change on it. When you're looking at Industrial 5.0 and the impact of having a flexible understanding on going after the changes on it, that offers a human-centric approach of leading it and understanding it and explaining it, you're going to have better results. You think change is the law of life, and these who take only to the past or present are certain to miss the future. And with that, I'll take some questions.